All right, thank you everyone. Very excited to be joined here by Dan Hasler from Australia. So I got the opportunity of being introduced to Dan by a close friend of mine at university. It turns out that I think me and Dan are not sure if we ever met, but we heard about each other's over the year. And Dan was very helpful in just sharing his information and helping me get started my transition over to the US because we're kind of in a similar field. We have the same passion in helping people, helping them with their performance. So, Dan, thank you for coming on. So we're going to be talking about mental fitness, and you're over there in Australia, and it'd be just good to just kick off with how have you been maintaining your mental fitness while you've been over there?
Yeah, I mean, prior to coronavirus, pretty easily because it's Australia, and it's a pretty good place to be. Obviously, when coronavirus hit, being somewhat reliant on being able to get out face to face and work with people, and the first thing that really kind of hit, probably even before worrying too much about the health side of things, was like the job. How am I going to maintain what I do for a living? And the reason I say that is in Australia, and we were talking about this just a little bit before we went on, in Australia, like, we've not been hit in the same way that, say, a UK or a US has been hit in terms of infection rates, and certainly, our death rates. As I said when we were chatting before, as we're recording this, it's like 97 people have died, which on May, what is it now, May 15th, 97 people have passed away, which is obviously terrible, but in the context and the bigger picture, we've been either very fortunate or very good, or probably a combination of the two, in terms of how things have been handled from a health perspective. So a lot of people in Australia are definitely, I think, feeling it more so from the economic impacts in their day-to-day life. Of course, they've got empathy for the massive world dramas that are unfolding, and obviously I'm English, so I'm thinking about my friends and family in the UK, obviously. But so it's been an interesting one where my ability to control my thinking, my ability to control my emotional response and things like that has probably been governed by my ability to see impact or progress in how my business and how I'm looking after my team responds to the challenges that this has brought up.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you on the economic impact causes a lot of stress and anxiety. So I had a friend in the UK. We were on a Zoom call party, and this friend is normally very loud, very energetic, and then we noticed immediately that they were very quiet, very somber. And it turns out that boyfriend has lost a job and just worrying about paying the rent. So that's a big part of affecting your mental fitness, is just so much uncertainty. Where if if your job's safe, or where are you going to get another job?
Yeah, and again, from a very individual point of view, the nature of our work, we've been able to move somewhat and respond, and also sort of backed up by what the government have done in terms of looking after employers. So if we're getting some assistance to pay our team members and things like that. So from that point of view, for me to walk around and go, oh, it's terrible, would be somewhat insensitive and somewhat egotistical, when there are literally people who, like that, lost their jobs because they're either in a profession or a domain where perhaps the government aren't putting so much funding in, or perhaps their job, a lot of casual workers, for example, who might only have just taken on that role, that's gone, and there's no assistance for that. And so the big spike in unemployment here, big spike in underemployment here. Yeah. And so it's one of those where it almost feel bad that I don't feel that bad, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Which is an interesting phenomenon, because you look around and other people do have it really tough.
Yeah.
For any number of reasons. And then, of course, it's, our work is then centered around trying to help those people who are finding it really tough. So, yeah, it's a really interesting sort of phenomenon at the moment. Our biggest challenge is, I think, from a business point of view and you know, a team unit and a family point of view, will be what happens down the track. You know, what happens when, if, you know, as they relax the restrictions here, things do spike again. What happens if all the work that normally is being generated now, well, and it isn't, because of, you know, there's no live, you know, I'm used to speaking on a stage 2 or 3 times a week in front of hundreds of people, which then generates more work. Well, that's not happened. So where's that? Where you know, we're kind of in this bubble, and I'm wondering where that bubble's going to emerge, where all of a sudden there is, you know what I mean? Like, there is no work. So yeah, it's one of them where it's sort of in a bit of a wash cycle, where you sort of, you're sort of going around, and that idea of, you know, the opportunity that this has given me and my team in particular is an opportunity to really walk the walk every day. You know, like, I'm so lucky that I love my job, so it's not a big drama for me to get up and do what I enjoy. But all this, and doing what I enjoy is helping people who might not enjoy what they enjoy, right? So you sort of give them all these strategies, you give them all these tools, and now we're actually having to really walk this walk about being agile and having a growth mindset, or being taking a moment to focus on your breath before you make any decisions, you know. And it's like, they were things that we would say and we'd do, but there wasn't really this pressing necessity to do it because we had everything sweet. And now it's kind of like, okay, yeah, it's a great opportunity, as I say, for us to really lead and teach by doing and showing, I think.
Okay. Yeah, there's a key thing I wanted to come to, is the program that you set up called 21 Days. But just to touch on some of the things you said on there, is like how, I think when this first started and it was 6 weeks in, we kept thinking, oh, it'll be finished in 8 weeks. And then now it's carrying on. And as you're saying, there's going to be several new normals, I call it, because in 2 months' time, there's going to be different challenges. And then closer to the end of the year, and it's scary how, as you just mentioned, industries are just being wiped out. So like the events industry is pretty much gone, and you have to be really creative what you're doing online. The hotel industry, you know, pretty much gone. So people are really having to be creative and facing new challenges. And I love this 21-day program that you've done. So I've been doing that with my wife, and it really helped, definitely in the early stages, just because every day there was something that we had to try and do, and it just helped us remember practices. So for instance, like there's something you did on there where you ask each other how your day went, and I'm going to throw my wife under the bus here, because I never used to pick my phone. I used to always just concentrate on her, but now I caught myself, actually, as I'm asking her how her day went, I'm still busy sending stuff on my phone. So I actually had to learn, put the phone down and really like tune in. So it was good habits to tune back into it and have something to do every day. So I was going to just touch on, if you just wanted to give, you know, how did you set up 21 Day and how have you found doing it?
Yeah, so it actually happened. The reason, so it's called 21 Ways in 21 Days to Better Wellbeing, and the idea is that each day there's a short little stimulus video, 2 minutes, maybe 3 minutes, and then some form of reflection activity. And I wanted to set it up so individuals could just jump into it and do it, or as you've mentioned, Sonny, you know, you can do it as a family, just something to, and when I put it together, it's literally something to do while people were in isolation. And the reason that happened was my sister from the UK sent me a message saying, oh, we've just gone into lockdown for 3 weeks. And it was like, I wonder if this is, you know, I reckon a psychologist could unpack this. You know, my first instinct was, wow, okay, what can I do? and it's, like, okay, so a whole country has gone into lockdown on the other side of the world for 21 days.
Yeah.
And my first reaction was, okay, what can I do? I reckon the psychologist could have some fun with that. But the initial reaction was really, okay, what can I do to help my little sister? I think that, when you sort of unpack it, it's that big brother, protective thing coming out. So, to be honest with you, the initial idea was just to put some stuff together for my sister, because she's really, she's often tuning into my podcasts, or she's, what are you reading at the moment? And it's all been really informal, an email here, a message there, oh, check this book out, try this, and I thought, okay, well, because, my schedule had cleared as well here, right? So I had a lot of time on my hands. And then this opportunity, Vic saying, okay, well, we're going to lockdown. So it's sort of, everything's kind of fell into place. So within about an hour, I decided what I was going to do. And then basically, it just based the program around the pillars, the tenets of essentially mindfulness, emotional intelligence, and positive psychology. So, 3 things there, roughly, it's not quite this, but roughly, a week on each, roughly. And so I basically just put it out there on the platforms that we use for our professional paid coaching courses that typically people will engage in. And, just put it out there, put it just out on my Facebook, not just put it out to my mates to start with, and just tagged a few of my mates. I don't have that many friends on Facebook. It's not really something I spend too much time on, but I just put that out there, and I post like once every 3 years. But I put that out there, and they shared it. And so within a couple of weeks, I think now about 600 people or so, or 600 families have gone through it. And it, just did it for free. So I basically put it where if you wanted to chip in $20, then that's great, because that just helps us pay for the platform and keeps it sustainable. But yeah, for the most part, we got loads from India, because India went into this brutal lockdown. And again, I think, I don't know, but a lot of positive psychology thoughts or thing, there's a lot of Eastern, there's a lot of Buddhist type through lines in that. So it was pretty popular in India. But yeah, so now it's just sort of bit like the curve. So it's just sort of dying down now. People are starting to think, okay, well, we're going to get back out there and do things. But it's been quite interesting just to see where people have joined from, what they've got out of it, and some of the comments on the activities. Or it's been really good that the most affirming thing is people saying in the comments, oh, this was great, I had a great conversation with my husband as a result of this activity, or I've never thought of something like this before. And the other one is, sometimes people will say, and this is a classic, and it's you kind of alluded to it before, it's things like, yeah, I knew this, or I'd heard about this, I just don't do it. So the idea of just so you shouldn't be, of course I shouldn't be looking at my phone while I'm asking, but it's just this idea of it's not what we know that counts, it's what we do. Everyone knows that they shouldn't do these things or should do these things, but so the 21 ways, literally 21 ways every day was just a little, and it might just be a slight tweak in language. There's very little on there that's arduous. There's very little on there which you've got to devote an hour to. It's just a case of here's a stimulus, and here's a little activity that you might consider doing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm so glad that you posted it on Facebook, because that's where I saw it. And what I love was it was very short little snippets. So it was easier for me to dedicate some time every day to think, okay, just go and do it. I mean, hold my hand up, I did fall off the wagon a few times, but it was easier to come back. And it was...
You're a 6-month-old, mate, you're allowed.
Yeah, actually, yeah, that's a few days where he just decided that, Daddy, we're going to have to change the script or that. I mean, even for me, where this is something that I do and I practice, there was a lot of, stuff that we know we should be doing, practicing gratitude, but everyone says the word, but actually the exercises you had in there, when I sat down and actually did it, I even ended up writing a note, a long like letter to my dad, which was, I don't know where it came from, but it was actually, I did one of your day thing, and he was literally shocked when he got the letter. And it's taking the time to do those things, which is what I really loved about the program. And it was really at the right time. And I like the way that you used the PERMA model, where it was kind of evidence backed, and in particular doing the strength test that we did. I was quite shocked when I did that, because I did that not the same one you did. I did something similar 2 years ago when I was back in the UK before I did my transition. And doing it now, it was very strange how some strengths had really dropped, some strengths were up higher. And I think maybe it's just because what I was going through in my life. And it was strange also when my wife did it. She had just got a job at the time. And it was just weird to see that I learned something, that your strengths are actually constantly moving. So you put a clip on there, which if you want to build certain strengths, the exercises to do. And I'd never even seen that before. So thank you for sharing that.
No worries, right? It's interesting on the strengths thing, like, in the post-psych space, they talk around the VIA strengths, so the values in action, character strengths. And it's that word, that action, that's important, because absolutely your circumstances will, they mean you have to draw on different aspects of your strengths. So, if you're in your comfort zone, there's a fair chance that there'll be certain strengths which you're just going to, and you don't even really need to use them that much, because you're in your comfort zone. But when you get into the stretch zone, or even when you're thrown into complete adversity, sometimes you'll see other strengths which, they talk about 24 and being ranked. Sometimes, and to be clear, it's not saying that if you've got one ranked at 23 it's a weakness. It just means that based on your responses to a survey, these others scored highly. But it's not uncommon to see strengths bubble up as and when they're needed. And so when we do this with clients, or with just people who happen to be just engaging in the conversation about it, it's kind of saying, all right, so when you look at these strengths, whether it's let's say it's a less turbulent time, let's just say it's a normal time, whether the new normal, so we get the other side of this and go, all right, so you do this. The value in doing that survey for me isn't getting the list of strengths. The value in it is in the introspection and in the thinking that goes after it. It's like, what surprised you that came out on top? Why do you think that came? What surprised you about what's lower down? Is there anything lower down that you'd like to see higher up? And it's that conversation. It's a really interesting one is ask other people, which of these strengths do you see, right? So let's say I do the survey, and humour, based on my survey results, humour comes out number one, right? And I'm looking, I go, oh, I am a funny man, yeah? But then I ask 5 of my closest friends, or my wife, or, whoever, my teammates, and not a single one of them chooses humour. That's an interesting self-awareness exercise, right? Maybe I'm not as funny as people as I think I am, right? And again, that's not to say that they're right, but it's just an interesting exercise. And for me, whatever survey we do online, whatever psychometric test we do, for me, it's not the results that are actually the powerful part. It might be interesting to some degree. What the powerful part is the introspection and reflection that you then do as a result of that.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And it's this, listening to you has actually reminded me why my strengths shifted, because I completely come out of my comfort zone, moving to the US, just becoming a dad. So it was actually strange to do that introspection with my wife and thinking, okay, why has this dropped so far down? And, why has this come up? So that was quite useful. And another thing that just popped in my head was the M on the PERMA model, where meaning, and it's something that I've done with clients I've worked with, of trying to find that sweet spot. But I like the way you kind of coined it, of something where you give value to others, something that you enjoy, and finding that sweet spot where you can. I can't remember what the third circle was now.
So you're good at, you're good at it, you enjoy it, and
Yeah.
it makes a difference. And it's interesting. We've been putting a program together for a group literally this week, and we're talking about you find something that you're good at and you enjoy. That's a beautiful place to be, right? Because you'll lose track of time in that spot. You're good at it and you enjoy it. So that's people will be able to relate to that. Maybe it's when they're playing guitar, or maybe it's when they're playing a game on the computer, or they're cooking, whatever, right? So they're good at it and they enjoy it. Beautiful. But in terms of finding meaning, what we want to see is, okay, well, to what extent does that then make a difference? So some people, so use cooking, for example. Does it make a difference? Absolutely. It feeds my family and it brings my family together. So there can be a layer of meaning for that, right? But what we want to talk about, the reason we talk about is if it doesn't have those three things, then it's not going to be sustainable. Because so let's without it making a difference, by definition, it doesn't make a difference. So it has no meaning. It's enjoyable, but it doesn't have any meaning, right? So we're going to say it has to have this element of it makes a difference. The issue we have, and I think this is somewhat just opinion based, but I think a lot of the time we stuff up this idea of helping others, because when kids are young, we tell them you've got to make a difference, and that we make them go and volunteer somewhere, right? And I don't know to what extent that's a thing in American schools, but over here, a lot of schools will say to me, "Yeah, Dan, it's great. All year 9 have to volunteer," which means they kind of misunderstand the nature of volunteering if everyone has to do it. But anyway, right, the point is they go, they're pushed out to various places. Yeah. And the problem with that is it rarely takes into account what the kids are good at or what they enjoy, right? Yeah. And so if let's say, for example, they are, so let's just say one of those other 2 rings are missing. So let's say that, so it makes a difference because you're going out to help someone, right? So it makes a difference. Great. Are you good at that? Yeah, I am good at serving soup at Soup Kitchen. I am good at picking up litter off the beach. I am good at that. I can do that. But if I don't enjoy that, then it becomes a chore. And basically, we try and avoid chores, right? We'll do them if we think we're going to get something for it. So if this goes on my resume that I've helped out, if I've, then great. But obviously, in the truest sense of meaning, we're doing it selflessly for others, right? It's just what I'm suggesting is that if we can find this sweet spot of what makes a difference, what are you good at, and what you enjoy. So if you take the enjoyment out of it, it becomes a chore, and sooner or later, people will start avoiding chores. If it's something that makes a difference and you enjoy it, but you're not good at it, how sustainable is that? You're not going to be asked back. Like if you're not good at what it is you're supposed to be doing. So if you can't serve soup, if you keep spilling it over the people, if you can't, if you drop as much litter as you pick up, you're not going to be asked back. So that isn't sustainable. So it's really about, taking that opportunity. Just to be clear, I'm not saying that you shouldn't do things you don't enjoy, because that in itself is that's a growth opportunity. But for something to be really sustainable, what can we find out there? And I think, opportunities like this time where people have got some time just to sit back and go, all right, well, let's get creative. What can I do to help make this world a bit better? And even if it's just the world literally, 2 houses in each direction, what can I do that I'm good at and I enjoy that will help the immediate world around me?
Yeah, and I think because you hear a lot of people now wanting to find their passion. And I think what people were missing was, when they were always saying that point, it was like, what am I good at and what do I enjoy? Yeah. And people forgot the part that, does it make a difference? Is it needed? So I'm hoping now that people have that opportunity to slow down. They'll start looking at all 3 of the aspects. Does it make a difference? Are you good at it? And do you enjoy it?
Because you think about that word, I mean, you use the word passion there, like it's hard to get passionate about something that doesn't really matter, right? So it's a really important part to getting outside of ourselves. If we even, and not massively, like you don't have to go and change the world, like I say, but even if it's just something that, you know, so you might be good at playing guitar, you might enjoy playing guitar, and that making a difference might just be when you sit down with your daughter and play a song, you know, and you know that that's something well, the funny thing is, you might not know that that's something that's actually really strengthening a bond, or really, you know, that's going to be something that she remembers forever. You might not actually know that, but on some level, that's what adds that layer of meaning. Rather than just sitting in your room playing the guitar, even though you enjoy that moment to yourself, that's great. But just that thin, even at the thinnest veneer of getting outside of yourself with that, I think it's almost like the secret sauce, you know.
And I love the point you made about you don't have to change the world, because I think a lot of people kind of feel I've got to do something, I've got to leave my mark, or it's just literally, even if it's just two houses around you, making the meaning there. And I've been seeing in the UK where a lot of people who lost their jobs, they got to volunteer to help deliver stuff for the NHS. And the changes I saw, like one of the guy was a guy I knew who used to be a recruitment consultant. And that, since he's been doing that, the change in him is just remarkable. And it's like, it just shows you just have to do a small thing that has meaning.
Yeah, I mean, you know, like, I think it's a common trope in psychology where they say, you know, like one of the best things you can do for yourself is do something for someone else, you know, and as you say, it doesn't even have to be, you know, I kind of put the parameters on, it has to be outside your house, even just inside your house, you know, like your immediate, just getting outside yourself and being really intentional about that, going looking for that, rather than just going, well, you know, I pay the bills and I do this. Of course I'm doing things for other people. You know, actually be somewhat more intentional and go looking for that. And yeah, as I say, it's, you know, these are things that up until now have been kind of like a nice to have. They've been very Instagrammy. It's been very, you know, but actually now I think when when you hold that up against the mirror of a global pandemic, all of a sudden things that people thought were really important 6 or 7 weeks ago all of a sudden don't seem that important, you know, and things which might not quite have had the time to do, we've got the time to do, and it's interesting to just reflect on how we feel as a result of doing those things, whether it is sitting and building Lego with your kid, or whether it is actually having a conversation with your missus, which has got more than "How was your day? Shit. How was yours? Shit." You know, you can, you know, it's interesting to see how how we might change. My hope is that we, you know, some people who need to change do change, because my fear is, and this is going to sound really bizarre against the backdrop of what's happening, but my fear is that people have really short memories, and it won't take long for people to get. We keep talking about the new normal, but you know what? I reckon as soon as a vaccine's found and everyone's back in, you know, on top of each other and chasing the dollar and whatever, you know, this will be something that our kids kind of remember happened, but whether we've substantially changed our way of being as a result of it, that remains to be seen. I think
that point has actually sent a shiver down my spine, that we could actually just go back to the old normal. And you're right, because I remember a lot of things happening, nothing on this scale, but it's very amazing how humans, like us humans, once we start chasing the dollar and we get back into busy, we just forget about everything and just go back to normal. So I really pray that doesn't happen. I pray that with the amount of time we've had for self-reflection, a lot of people are going to come out different and actually start to prioritize things differently of what's important.
It'll be interesting, because that'll be governed largely by the support people have, right? Because if, let's say, there's a period of, you know, significant economic downturn, well, people are literally going to have to chase the dollar, right? You know, in order to try and get back to where they were before, if that's the game that they feel they need to win. if they feel that's the game they need to be playing. So I think it's, that was a somewhat dystopian idea, but, maybe for anyone listening, it's kind of like, okay, well, I was a little, I've kind of primed people by thinking, oh, what about everyone else? But actually, just think about it in art. For you, Sonny, what's going to be different for you? For me, Dan, what's going to be different for me? Rather than, I'm worried that the whole world's just going to forget about it, which, I just think that's human nature. They're going to want to get back to what they know they can do, as opposed to what might be better.
Creating something new.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't know.
unfortunately, that's the way our brains are wired. It's easier to do what you know, basically.
Even if we know it's not the right thing, right?
Yeah.
Even if we know it's not the right thing, at least I know how to do that.
Well, let's see how it goes. I wanted to jump actually so this series I've been doing, where I've been talking with different people, how they're adjusting to the new normal. Something that came up actually from your 21-day program was a book you recommended, Performance Under Pressure, and where you talk about, so our brain is kind of split into our red emotional brain. I love this point because it really helps to explain it to people, and our blue logical calm brain.
Yeah.
A lot of people, when I've been talking with them, is trying to help them when you're trying to worry because there's so much uncertainty, is to just do that thing the guy mentioned in the book where we just write down in red everything that's not in your control. And after you write it down, it's easy for you to just look at it and think you can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
Put that to one side. And then you write down everything that you can control and then kind of pour your energy into that. And I think it's definitely helped me during this process. And I just wanted to get your thoughts on how do you think has that helped you as well during this process?
Yeah, for sure. It's an interesting, so the book Perform Under Pressure by Kerry Evans, C-E-R-I Evans. He's the mental skills coach for the New Zealand All Blacks rugby union team. So regarded as probably one of the best sporting teams across all sports, in terms of their win rate. So they do a lot of work around their mental agility and skills. And so this model of his, the red-blue brain, it's like you said, it's so simple, and it's such a nice way to bring people into the space of thinking about their thinking. Lots of people don't think about their thinking; they just fly off the handle, right? Or they worry unnecessarily. But to them, they can't see any other way of being. It's just they'll tell you, that's just who I am. I'm a worrier. That's just who I am. I just lose control. That's just who I am. And the whole point of the red-blue brain is actually that's who we all are. It's just that some of us, and that sounds very patronizing, but some people are better able at recognizing when they're about to fly off the handle, and they pull it back. And that is nothing to do with being superior. It's just a bit like any other skill that you might learn. If you've never learned how to kick a football, chances are you're not going to be very good at kicking a football. If you've never learned to play the guitar and you pick up a guitar, chances are you're not going to be Jimi Hendrix straight away. So the whole point of the red-blue brain is that it's a way of just conceptualizing how we think, and then a strategy to learn how to better manage your thinking and your emotions. So those with a psych understanding would know about the role the amygdala plays in the fight, flight, and freeze response, and that essentially is the red response. Am I safe here? And what do I need to do to keep myself safe? The blue brain is more located, prefrontal cortex stuff, rationalizing, language, creative thinking, that kind of stuff. And so the red-blue tool is a way of literally, so once you have that visualization, if you like, of red-blue thinking, placing a continuum underneath and locating yourself on that continuum. And it's as simple as, and this one seems to hit home when we use it with people. Before you walk in the door at night, so after you've been at work, or even before you walk into the kitchen or before you walk in to sit down at dinner, ask yourself, am I red or blue? Am I red or blue? Because let's say you've just got off the phone and it's just been an awful phone call. Maybe you've just lost your job. Maybe you've just lost the contract. Maybe it was an argument with someone. You've just got off that phone and dinner's on the table, right? Yeah. So you'd like that, and you just get off the phone, put the phone down, dinner's on the table, you go into the dinner, whatever, sit down, and someone says something, or your kids are flicking food or whatever, or you tread on Lego in the way to the dining table, and just blow up, right? Now, if I was to ask you, is that how you would like to show up at dinner? The chances are is, no, Dan, that's not the dad I want to be. That's not the mum I want to, that's not who I want to be. And they go, but I couldn't help it because I just had that phone call. Yeah. The red-blue tool seems to just, or tries to put a little gap in between that. So what happens is you put the phone down and dinner's on the table. So bang, phone down. The question you ask yourself is, am I red or blue? Now, obviously you're red because it was a shitty phone call. But the minute you ask yourself, or the second you ask yourself, am I red or blue? If you remember, blue is responsible for language. So it literally, if you imagine going, it stops, right? And the minute you stop, then you're presented with a choice. Do I want to keep going down that path of flying off the handle? Because I'll definitely fly off the handle if someone flicks food or I tread on Lego or something, right? Or someone says, how was the phone call, right? I'll definitely fly off the handle. Or do I want to just pull myself back a little bit so I show up as the parent, as the partner I want to be? Yeah. And I don't know how simplistic that came across, because when we draw this out, it looks ridiculously simple. And that's actually the power of it. Because what you need is a simple strategy to use when your red brain is taking over. Yeah. And you know this, this is basically just mindfulness. It's about, where am I at? Where do I want to be? Yeah. And so what happens is, if you do that, you literally, the words can't just come out. You can't fly off the handle. What happens is, if you do fly off the handle, then let's be honest with ourselves, you've made a conscious decision to fly off the handle at that point. Yeah. And just, like you were saying before about the circle activity, about all the things we can control, I found that can be a relatively small list when compared to all the things you can't control. And if nothing else, the one thing or two things we can control is, how am I going to walk through that door? I can control that. The minute I stop and think, I can control how I'm going to walk through that door. I can either walk through as the stressed, fired up, angry person, worried person, emotional, and nothing wrong with emotion, just to be clear, but, or the overwhelmed person. Or I can say, you know what, that's not who I need to be as I walk through that door. I'm going to show up as like this. Even if for the next 10 minutes, I'll have my meltdown afterwards in private, because is it helpful or harmful for me to walk in and blow up in front of my kids? You tell me. I don't know, but and it's not for me to tell people that they shouldn't do that. Yeah. It's the question is, do you want to do that? Because if you don't want to do that, we can do something about that. Yeah, I love that. I love the way you summarize it. Is it's something that mindfulness talks about, where just creating that space between your thoughts so that you choose what you're going to do. And I love the red-blue tool, because for people who don't do mindfulness, it's something that they can quite easily understand. Hot emotion, the blue calm emotion. And it's language. It's language that they use already. Yeah. So it's like they talk about seeing red. They talk about getting hot under the collar. They talk about the heat of the moment, right? So Kerry has locked onto something there which gives anybody a way into mindfulness, which, depending on your background or whatever, some people have a cynicism of it. Some people think it's faith-based, or faith-based people don't like it because it's counter to faith. So it just gives for me anyway. I've found it's one of I'm so pleased I came across the book as a result of doing some work with some sports, and yeah, it's just been a gift because it's just explained in such a beautiful way that anyone can get it.
Yeah.
Mm.
Well, I know we're a bit pressed for time, so there's one question I'm actually itching to ask you. Is this came up as well from the talks I've been having, where people have been struggling with what I call grumpy days, and I'm not sure, maybe not so much in Australia, but definitely in the UK and other parts of Europe and the US, where the lack of contact has been really bad, where you haven't been able to even see your parents, your brother, your sister. And at the start of it, everyone was trying to do their normal routines and habits. But as things started to go on, lockdown fatigue kicked in, and you started to have these grumpy days more and more. Now, what I found is, for friends who've really handled it well, they were quick to hold their hand up and say, I'm having a grumpy day. They were quick to accept that they're having a grumpy day. And if they felt like crying, cry. If they felt like they're staying under the duvet with Haagen-Dazs or any other ice cream they want, they did that.
Any other brand? Lots of brands out there. Yeah. No sponsorship deals here.
Ben and Jerry's, whatever you wanted.
Whatever you want.
Yeah. But I think a big part was finding out that it's okay to make that mental shift and accept what's happened. Because I read an article where people have put this, likened it to being in a war zone. And for your mind to actually adapt to the war zone, you have to make that mental shift and accept where you are. Yep. Give yourself time to heal. And once you heal, you'll be amazed what your mind can come up with. New routines, new habits. And I wanted to hear your take on it, where people who are stuck in trying to do the old routines and the old habits and find that when you're confined in the house 24/7 with your kids, it's just not working.
Yeah.
Wanted to hear your view on it. Yeah.
Oh, there's so much there. So let's go to that. So the first part, when you were talking, let's be honest. That's. I think this is a sexist comment, right? But it's more for blokes than others. Ever since I imagine me and you are similar ages, if not the same age, and ever since we were kids, we've either been told, as boys in particular, don't get angry, right? Don't get angry, or don't cry, right? So the two ends of the emotional spectrum were taken away from us, especially as big blokes, right? We certainly can't get angry because we'll hurt, it's just because anger is synonymous with fighting, which of course it isn't, but from primary school days we were told, don't get angry, mate,
Yeah.
And also,
I can definitely relate to that, because I had two sisters. Yeah. Definitely never allowed to get angry, but they could get as angry as they wanted to. There's only something later on in life that I realized how it really impacted you, where you're always holding on to your emotion.
Because you can't, and then the other extreme, because again, and then this sounds generalised, but there's a real body of work around emotional intelligence of blokes, right? And just day-to-day experience with big blokes, we don't cry, right? So the two extremes or two extremes, not the two, but two extremes of human emotions or of being human have been kind of taken away from us. So it's kind of like comes back and says, so you've got to be stoic, you've got to keep calm, you've got to be, And let's be honest, that's okay sometimes, but for a lot of times, forget the global pandemic, just day to day, it's perfectly human to get angry. It's absolutely right that we shouldn't go around punching people, right? Obviously. But there's nothing wrong per se with getting angry, because that's a perfectly normal human. I often talk about there's nothing wrong with getting angry, but don't go punching someone. There's nothing wrong with being jealous per se. You just don't go stealing. There's nothing wrong, And so for me, like this idea of learning about emotions and emotional intelligence, in the normal day, we've been stunted. Then you throw a global pandemic on top of things, and people feel like, oh, I can't show my emotions. Please, for me, that's like, the metaphor I'm thinking of is just this pressure cooker, and at some point or other, there's nothing else that can happen except a blow. So I love the idea that what you brought up. The people who have coped better, or seem to have coped better, are the ones who've been able to put their hand up and say, "This is a shocker. you know, and I'm out. I'm tapping out for the day, or I'm tapping out for 2 hours, whatever it is, and presuming or assuming that they can put their hand up in front of people who get, yep, I get that, off you go. Because the worst thing that can happen, and I often have this with, you know, working with leaders, someone puts their hand up and says something along the lines of, you know, I just need a walk, I just need to get out, and the leader says, you know, and sees that as a sign of weakness.
Yeah. Or sees that as a sign of, I need to manage this person, you know, out of, so that they don't affect everyone else, instead of actually going to take care of them.
Exactly, right. And seeing this as a perfectly human, you know, there are hundreds of thousands of people across the world dying, right? Of course, if you're not feeling any emotions, that's more of a worry to me, right? You know, like, surely you should be feeling something. So the first point of, yeah, absolutely, you know, being able to put your hand up in an environment where people respect the hand going up, you know, and whether that's a family unit, you know, because again, psychs could have, I mean, there will be PhDs galore written about these past 3 months, right? And the dynamic, you know, the family relationships, community dynamics, but recognizing that, you know, that emotional intelligence for me isn't a solo game. You know what I mean? Like, it has to be in your immediate environment, because it's no good if I feel comfortable talking about my emotions, but if everyone looks at me and thinks, geez, he's a big bloke, he's talking about getting upset, weird, then that's not going to be sustainable long term. I'll suddenly realise that they think this is weird. Okay, I'm going to keep that to myself, and all of a sudden I'm back at square one. So that was the first thing. The second thing, and I've gone off on a tangent, which I'm prone to doing. So, but that second thing, I think you were talking about. Well, I think what I heard was, you know, when there's all this uncertainty is like kryptonite for humans, right? You know, like, it's the one thing we crave is certainty. You know, even if we know it's certainly going to be rubbish, at least we know it's going to be rubbish. What we're not keen on, and this is why some politicians are missing the mark, I think, in their leadership, is that there is no clarity. It's either overly optimistic rubbish, or overly pessimistic, you know, bringing doom, right?
Yeah.
But there's no clarity. You know, are schools opening? Are they not? Are businesses able to do this? Are they not? And so what happens when there's this uncertainty is people go looking for certainty. So panic buying, for example, I think it was a thing in America. It was certainly a thing here. What's the one thing I can control? How much toilet roll I have in my house, right? You know, so until it got to the point where we couldn't, yeah, and then you start to see people fighting over toilet roll. Yeah. But you know, so that idea of what, you know, going back to what we can control, if people can recognise, well, the only thing they can really control is how they show up as they walk through that door, you know, or how they respond. You know, they can't control what's happening out there, but they can absolutely control how they respond. That for me is really important. And that last bit, and I've managed to bring it full circle, I think, is that idea of recognizing where we're at. You know, so I was actually, my last podcast that I did, I interviewed a guy called Michael Bungay Stanier, who's basically one of the world's leading gurus on coaching, right? And we were talking about this idea of optimism versus realism. And I can't remember exactly what it was, but he cited, so I'd have to go back and listen, but he cited this study during the study of soldiers in prisoner of war camps, I think in the Vietnam War. And what they found was it was the optimists that died first, right? Because they didn't accept the reality. And so because they didn't accept the reality, they kept thinking, no, it's going to get better, it's going to get better, it's going to get better. And of course, they're in a prisoner of war camp. It didn't get better. So at the end of the, you know, it got to a certain point where they went, actually, it's not getting better. And they, Yeah, and I'm laughing about this. It's dreadful, obviously, but and I'm somewhat being flippant in the way I'm talking about it. But it's going to get better. We're going to get out. We're going to get out. We're going to get. They didn't get out. They died. The ones that did get out at the end of the war were the ones who accepted this is awful.
Yeah.
This moment is dreadful. What can I do to make the next 60 minutes, next hour? It's Viktor Frankl's Search for Meaning, like Man's Search for Meaning, all that kind of stuff where it's like this is a terrible situation. Let's accept that. And if terrible's the right word or whatever, but this is what it is. Let's accept that. Let's not try and sugarcoat it. Let's not try and overplay it. Let's not catastrophize it. Let's try and recognize what it is for what it is, and then recognize what I can do. And I talk in that 21 days program about moving one notch, So this is what it is. How do I make this just a fraction more tolerable? How do I make this a fraction better? How do I make myself a fraction happier in this situation? What is it how do I make my daughter feel a fraction happier in this situation? And it's those small incremental things, because then you make that small gain, and then it's that becomes where okay, so that's where we're at now. And then you make that small gain again. Oh, that's where we're at now. Rather than thinking, I'm here, it's going to be brilliant. We never get that far, and we lose hope, And I think that loss of hope it's that loss of hope which is the killer in a very real sense.
I love your answer to this. Even though you thought you were going off tangent, but your answer was amazing because you put all the points back to bear. And I love that point about the loss of hope, because if the fire goes out, it's so hard to switch it back on. And that's why I hate when people get so optimistic, and I don't like using the word, let's be tough, let's be resilient, let's be extra positive. It's like, no, let's accept what has happened. Once you accept what has happened, then you allow the brain to come up with solutions. And this was something I really loved from your 21-day program. Was I love the way you just kept it to just what's the next thing we can do, just one little thing. Because I think a lot of the time with the work I do with people always want to do so much. I want to do this, I want to do that, and then they go out and they burn themselves out. And it's like just take one step. What's that next step that you can do? And I think in this period is the more we can accept what's happened, not catastrophize or be miserable. Just accept what's happened, and then watch what the mind can do a lot, and it will come up with new ways of what it can do.
Absolutely, yeah.
All right, Dan, thank you so much for giving your time for this. It's a pleasure as always talking with you. I definitely will try and get that the link for your last podcast, so I can share it on here if people want to listen to it, because I think it's really useful information there.
Yeah, no worries, we'll do. I'll make sure you get that.
All right, take care. Have a good day.
You too. Cheers, mate. Bye.